Casper R. Braverman. As we begin the service, I would ask if any of you has a cell phone or any other noise-making device, please turn it off at this time. We're going to begin the service today with active duty service personnel from the United States Air Force presenting the flag to the family.
If able, please rise for the rendering of military honor. You may now be seated.
Esohenoi elechari me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai ose shamayim va'aretz Al yiten lamot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishon shomer Yisrael. I lift up mine eyes unto the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, nor your protector will not slumber. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. Death has taken our beloved Cass. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation, and in their tears, there is loneliness. Loss now and sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends and family. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For it was Cass's love that united us in life, in which death cannot sever. For his companionship shared along life's paths, which continues now through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and his mind that brought us such joy and happiness. May these two now be a precious remembrance. For all of these and more we give thanks to you, O God. In times of grief, we turn to our sacred scriptures, looking for that ever new message of God's nearness. I invite you to turn with me into your leaflets as we offer the 23rd Psalm together. We read, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." In times like this, we hear the words of Kohelet, the words of Ecclesiastes, who wrote, "For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sew up, a time for silence and a time to speak. And so speak we do, as we cry out like Job in saying, "Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach." The Lord has given, the Lord has taken away. As an ancient people of faith, we cry out, "Blessed be the name of God." Take a moment now for silent prayer and personal reflection, lifting up in our hearts some of our dearest memories of Cass. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable unto you, our rock and our Redeemer. Together we say, Amen, Amen. We come now to words of remembrance, and it's my honor to invite up Cass's son, Mike, to share some of his remembrances.
I'm just a warm-up act, so more is going to come. You know, people often talk about someone who's larger than life, but with my dad, it was really true. He and my mom raised the three of us to who we are today. Some of us may be a bit rough around the edges, but we're all happy and successful with meaningful lives. I really don't think there's anyone who did not like him, much less love him. He was really the most even-tempered person I've ever known. He always made everyone around him feel at ease. He was a true King Solomon, and like Solomon, he had so much wisdom. I had the privilege of spending the last year with him, both here and in Phoenix for the winter. And while it seems at times like watching The Odd Couple or an episode of Gomer Pyle, with all the workouts I had to put him through and how we tried to avoid him all the time, I wouldn't trade a minute of that for anything in this world. I'm really glad he got a chance to see his country one final time during our drive back from Phoenix. And other than complaining about how his butt felt sitting in the car, he really enjoyed seeing everything all along the way. And yes, he did mark his territory many, many, many times along the way. I will miss him every day. Appreciate you all coming, and thank you all for your loving thoughts.
Beautiful words of truth. We invite up now Cass's son Bruce to share some of his remembrances.
This will be just a tad bit longer, but first, I do want to thank everybody who came out today, especially those from long distances. My cousin Betty from San Francisco, Max and Marissa from Phoenix, Sam, Margie, Cael, and Reese, who drove all the way in from Colorado. That would have meant a lot to my dad. Okay, hands are steady. Let's get going here. While my children, Sam, Max, Jake, and Lauren, and their spouses, Margie, Tori, and soon-to-be spouse, Marissa, and my grandchildren, Cael, Reese, and our newly born Jack, are the true joys of my life. But my dad was the rock that tied everything together. He was a steady constant in my life. He was the epitome of unconditional love. I have so many examples of what kind of man my dad was. To me, I like going back to his Von Steuben high school yearbook, where his nickname showed as Our Boy Cass. Represents his special qualities: dependable, loyal, caring, selfless, and those of you all know him, humble. He was the most humble man I've ever met. And as his son, I also saw sensitive but very strong, cool under pressure, loving, and extremely affectionate. He was also the peacemaker in the family, always was. One of the most important things to him was to make sure that the family stayed close. And then there is that great sense of humor. But that is what throws people at first. You'd never think this guy, the most clean-cut person you'd ever meet, never smoked, never drank, not even coffee. Gambling was limited to $2 a week playing poker. But my dad had quite the dark sense of humor. In fact, at our last Memorial Day barbecue a few weeks ago, he held court on the deck telling his favorite jokes. And make sure to ask us later about his favorite two assholes joke. My dad just loved to laugh, whether it be TV shows, stand-up comedians, or our favorite when we were little kids was to tickle him under the chin. Even until recently, he'd laugh like a little kid. In a world that revolves around material items, my dad was a breath of fresh air. those things meant absolutely nothing to him. He just wanted to be with his loved ones. He wanted us to be healthy, safe, and happy. He asked for so little out of life, just some very basic needs. He wanted to be close to his friends, his family, catch old TV shows, TCM classic movies, and of course, his beloved Cubbies. A diehard Cub fan his whole life. We were so excited for him that he got to see the World Series. Not in person, but he would rather been watching at home on his couch, and that's what he did. He got involved in all of our childhood activities, from Little League to Cub Scouts. I remember being so proud of my dad when he became the pack leader. And a funny note about that is, most of our Cub Scout, our big events were held in our grammar school gym, Woodrow Wilson. And we had to deal with our gym teacher, which I won't name right now, a lot. And this gym teacher was a throwback to the old days, a terror. And suffices to say, in today's culture, he would have been canceled. But even he liked my dad. So that was our hallway pass, never having to worry about getting hassled by the gym teacher. My dad came from what Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation. Being a little boy during the Depression and seeing his dad lose his business, which was a shoe store, and their home and everything else, my dad had to grow up fast. He portrayed the courage and sacrifice that was put upon this group of people. He tried to enlist in the Army Air Corps, which is now the Air Force, at age 17 without telling his parents, wanting to join his two older brothers, Allan and Myron. He was the youngest of 6 children. But he was required to wait till he was 18, and then he joined. He wanted to be a pilot. He wanted to be a pilot his whole life. But by the time he got to boot camp, he found out that there were enough pilots. So he was trained to be a gunner on a B-24 and a B-29. Willing to give his life for his country does not surprise any of us, and that courage helped him become a rock-solid husband. And a side note that my cousin Betty reminded me of, that I took an honor flight with him years ago. He didn't want to go. He didn't feel he deserved to go. And I had the honor to take him, and it was a heart-wrenching experience. And I don't mean heart-wrenching in a bad way. It was just touching, and he was touched when he came back to the airport, and everybody that was there was supposed to be 1,000 people that come and greet you back, and it was the most touching experience of my life, and that meant a lot to him. He was also so devoted to my mom, he never stopped wearing her wedding ring. He missed her so much these past 18 years. My dad really was a bridge between two completely different worlds. One that is going away that most of us don't know about. I will sorely miss this family stories and experiences he used to tell us. Eventually, he became the father of 3 boys, which was no small feat considering his firstborn was my brother Mike, and most of you understand what that means. And his dream of being a pilot was finally realized about 15 years ago at the age of 80. He did get his pilot's license, and that meant a lot to him. And we were so proud of him, as he was proud of himself. Excuse me. My brothers and I were always extremely proud of my dad. But the greatest story I remember was when we were kids was the infamous, or famous maybe, softball game. He stood toe-to-toe with some bully who was twice his size, who had made an anti-Semitic remark. No one else was willing to take that stand, but Dad did, and he backed down. My dad was so extremely proud of his Jewish heritage, and he made sure we understood the importance of that. Our world can use a lot more people with this kind of courage. I can remember like it was yesterday when my brothers and I would anxiously wait for my dad to tuck us in. I would feel the hard, thick stubble of his beard, hugged him as hard as I could, never wanting to let go. My dad also had these beautiful, large hands, and they were so comforting, full of love. That I'll miss. Thinking of those specific times of just the kind of love he exuded reminded me of a song recently. This is a short excerpt of Dance with My Father by Luther Vandross. And no, I'm not going to sing, so we're all okay. When I and my mother would disagree, to get my way, I would run from her to him. He'd make me laugh just to comfort me. Then finally make me do just what my mama said. Later that night when I was asleep, he left $1 under my sheet. never dreamed that he would be gone from me. If I could steal one final glance, one final step, one final dance with him, I'd play a song that would never, never end, because I'd love, love, love to dance with my father again. Sorry. I do need to thank my brothers at this point, though, and you've heard some of it. Mike took it upon himself about a year ago to live with my father as long as necessary. He stayed at my dad's house in the summer, and then this past winter he flew back with my dad to Arizona, and they spent 5 months there. Mike was amazing at attending to every one of my dad's needs. Now, Mike will tell you that it was his honor to be with my dad and enjoyed their odd couple relationship, but we know it wasn't easy at times. Then in May, they took the road trip back, driving 10 hours to Colorado to visit Sam, Margie, Cael, and Reese, and then 16 hours back to Glenview. I'm so thankful to you, Mike, for making this happen. Dad's final months were made so special by spending time with his beloved great-grandchildren, Cael and Reese, and of course, Sam and Margie. Dad just adored his grandchildren. He was able to witness so many great accomplishments in their lives, and I was so proud of each of them. And a very sincere thanks to Chuck for tirelessly attending to all of my father's medical issues over so many years. It truly made a huge difference in the quality of his life by you advocating for him and being our medical translator. To quote a very dear friend of mine, Slate, whose eulogy for his father, he said, "I want more." And yeah, I do want more. Yeah, he was 95 years old and lived a long, full life, but I still need him here. Last Tuesday, when Karyn and I visited him in the hospital, I truly thought that was the last time I'd see him. He was not doing well. He'd had that heart attack a few days earlier, and he was pretty much saying it was done. He was done. We said our goodbyes, which was very, very difficult, and he told me how lucky he felt to live the life he had. He felt so blessed for the people in his life. My dad always made us feel loved and safe, except for when he dropped us off at Maryville when we were kids. That I won't go into right now. And especially his dearly adored, I can't even read what I'm seeing here. His 6 grandchildren, Sam, Max, Jacob, Lauren, Ilana, and Lara, and his 3 great-grandchildren, Cael, Reese, and Jack. His only regret and sadness came from the fact that he never got to see or hold his new special bundle, Jack Casper, who turned 5 weeks old when Dad passed. I showed him pictures and videos all the time that Tori and Jake would send me, and he loved those. But I'm thinking that he made an early exit, and I know other people have voiced this too. He made an early exit to have a direct conversation with God about getting Jack healthy and ready to go home from the hospital with Mommy and Daddy. My dad would risk and do anything for his family, even if it meant giving his life. But being consistent with his entire life, he rallied back the next day and was up and playing cards and eating the next day when Chuck visited. He was very clear in wanting to live all of a sudden. He knew the risks of having the stent procedure. On our next visit, he told us how important it was to be at my wedding in September. He said he asked me, will I be able to walk you down the aisle? Of course, I said yes, that's the plan. And he wanted to toast us with a special speech. And I'm sure the speech would include his special quote that Dad would love to repeat, which was his mantra in life. It was from Lou Gehrig's farewell speech, saying, "I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth." Well, in reality, everyone who knew my dad were the great lucky ones. He had the biggest heart in the world, absolutely the biggest heart, until its final beat. I love you, Dad. And you will be in my heart and my thoughts for my entire life. You will be sorely missed, leaving a big, big hole in our lives. I will continue to strive to live my life by the examples that you have shown me, but in reality, just getting halfway there will be a major accomplishment. You are finally joined back with the love of your life. I take comfort that you are now at peace.
Beautiful, thank you. Beautiful. We now invite up Cass's son, Chuck, to share some of his memories.
Words of advice, if you ever need to do this at a funeral, go first. So I don't forget to do this. I know Bruce thanked Mike and myself, but we all three played a role. Bruce played just an equal role with everything, dealing with having my father over at his house, all the parties that he had, taking care of all the financial stuff. So my father always wanted us to be a family and to be close. And I can at least say that it's not just Mike and I, as he said, it was all of us. And we are close and we always will be. Okay. A hamburger with ketchup, a hot dog with mustard. For many years, when people would ask me to describe my dad, those are the words and those are the phrases that I used. Sounds a little weird, but it's actually quite accurate. If my dad was at a restaurant and he ordered a hamburger with hot dog and he was served a hot dog with mustard, he would eat it. And he would be satisfied. He wouldn't complain, because that was the last thing he would ever want to do to make anybody feel bad or put anybody out of what they were supposed to be doing. He never put his needs before others. He was loved by many, and I don't know anyone that he met that did not take an instant liking to him. He was, by all definitions of the word, a mensch. He was born in 1925, the sixth child in his family. His father was a successful businessman and owned his own shoe store, but like so many of that time, he lost just about everything in the Depression. So my father grew up in the Depression, but when you talk to him about his childhood memories are actually happy. He had a loving family, and he had great friends. He loved to play baseball. One of the stories that he would love to tell was how he got this scar on his hand. Growing up, we believed him. He got in a battle with a snake. We had no reason not to believe him. He actually got it playing ball in the street, and he ran into the headlight of a car. But it was quite a long time before we actually knew that tale. And that was the beginning of many a tall tale that he would come to tell in his life. Because of limited money, when his sister Marge got married, they had to move back into the family house. And guess whose bedroom they had to share? That's it. They shared my dad's bedroom. So think about that growing up and sharing your bedroom with a newly married couple. School, however, was never his thing. I have report cards that my dad gave me of him and my mom. My mom's A pluses, great student, everything like that. Not so much for my dad. He's C's, D's. But school wasn't his thing. As my brother said, he joined the Army Air Corps when he turned 18, and he became a gunner, a nose gunner on a B-24 and later a tail gunner on a B-29. He was due to ship off to the Pacific the day after Japan surrendered. He regretted never seeing action like his brother Myron, who flew in over 70 missions, something unheard of, and he survived all those in Europe. After his service, he met my mom at a dance at Temple Sholem. The first gift that he ever bought for a woman was for my mother. No, it wasn't flowers, it wasn't candy, it wasn't jewelry. Yeah, you guessed it, it was a raincoat. I think you can all understand, every single gift he gave after that was cash. So, from there on in, then they got married in 1945 and eventually bought their house in Glenview. Money was very tight. They couldn't afford the extra $8 per month on their mortgage for the garage, which is why all who know that house still sits without a garage. My dad and mom became part of the original founding families of Congregation B'nai Jehoshua Beth Elohim. He eventually became to work for the Robert Ursain Company and designed the heating and air conditioning systems. In retirement, he enjoyed travel, playing with his friends, walking in the mall, playing cards, and most of all, being with his kids and his grandkids. After my mom died, my brothers and I bought him the flying lessons, and he passed everything he needed to pass except the one he had no control over, and that was his health report card. He always wanted to take that one solo flight, but that was never in the cards, but he at least got to experience a dream of his life, and that was to fly a plane. I was lucky enough to fly a couple times with him, and it was quite the experience, and I know my daughter, Lara, got that experience as well. As much of a mensch as he was, he fathered 3 boys. Not just any 3 boys, but 3 boys that were not necessarily the most well-behaved, to put it mildly. If this is not a test of patience, then there is no such test. The 3 of us would have brought out the dark side in Mother Teresa. His form of discipline would probably put him in jail these days. My brothers and I feared the thin brown strap that our butts all met on multiple occasions, and at times with our pants down. His famous line was, "This is going to hurt me much more than it's going to hurt you," as we mumbled under our breath, "Yeah, right." He also had a slight sadistic side, which was portrayed perfectly in an old video that we have. It's winter time, we're out, and my brother Mike is pulling a sled, and Bruce and I are on the sled, and all of a sudden the sled turns over. I'm on the bottom, and Bruce and Mike are just piling on me, wailing on me. So video doesn't stop, okay? Finally, they get up. I'm crying and crying and crying. The video continues not to stop. There's no discipline of them. There's no comforting of me. The video goes on and on. I guess he knew that the video was going to be such a great thing one day that he had to do that, and it was something for the future. At least that's the way I try to think about it. Joking aside, the actual truth was when he did discipline us, I now know that it actually did hurt him more than us. And it would not have surprised him if he went somewhere afterwards and cried. My dad, as has been said, he always said he was the luckiest person in the world, that he had a fantastic life, and he did. He enjoyed his life. He laughed a lot. He loved to tell jokes, or at least try to tell the jokes. And everybody loved to hear him tell the jokes, that is, except for the people in Branson, Missouri. More on that at another time. He lived his life to the fullest and kept very busy into his early 90s. Unlike when my mom died suddenly, I was able to say everything that I would ever want to say to my dad. And I will treasure every minute I spent with him, from our family vacations, of which started off the exact same way in the airport, with him wearing the exact same blue pants and the exact same yellow shirt. We also had some great family guide times in Las Vegas, and our trip to a strip club with him on Sam's birthday celebration gave us memories that we will laugh about for the rest of our lives. Beak! Will never quite mean the same to my brothers and I ever again. And not to be forgotten are the endless hours that I spent with him. About 90% of, ever since my mom died, just about every Sunday there was, I went over, he would either come over to my house or I would go to his house near the end, and we played cards. These are moments that I will treasure forever. I guarded those Sundays, and I'm ever so glad that I did. He looked forward to them, and I looked forward to them, and we treasured them dearly. My dad never made a lot of money, but he was one of the richest people in the world because he treasured the most valuable thing in life. He treasured people. He valued family like no other. He greatly loved his parents and all of his siblings and suffered deep, heartfelt losses when each one of them died, one by one. He was fortunate to find the love of his life and shared over 50 years with her. His life revolved around his 3 boys, and he loved Carolyn, Devida, Karyn, and Linda as they came into his life. His extended family of aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews, in-laws and cousins all added so much joy to him. But I haven't forgotten the apples of his eye, his 6 grandchildren. Sam, Max, Jacob, Lauren, Ilana, and Lara, and all the new additions they brought: Margie, Tori, Cael, Reese, Jack, and soon to be official, Marissa and Zach. All of you could brighten his day like nobody else could. There's also a special group of people without whom my dad's life would not have been anywhere near as fulfilled and as fun as it was, and that's his friends. From the many that are no longer with us to the few that still remain, including his neighbor for over 60 years, Pat, all of you were so incredibly important to my dad. And he loved all of you. I know his loss is felt just as deeply to you as it is our family. Excuse me for a minute. With you, he could joke and do things that he could not do with others. If some of you did not know, my dad could be that dirty old man as well. I will never forget several years ago when I was called, when my father fell and he was taken to the hospital. I was called, I dropped everything immediately, ran over, run into the emergency room at Lutheran General, and as I'm walking into his room, the nurse is leaving. And as I go in there, my dad and his old friend Bernie are sitting there smiling at each other with two gestures. And I won't do the whole gesture, but one hand had this, and the other hand had that, and I'll leave the rest to all you do. That's what I stopped everything I was doing and came running to the emergency room for. When he was 90 years old, and I took him for a colonoscopy, there was a nurse that took him back, and here he was. He just out of the blue said, "Have you ever slept with a 90-year-old man?" As I stood there in horror, she just laughed and said no. That wasn't it, though. Then he goes, "Would you like to?" And he was saying this before anesthesia. I will not say what he said after anesthesia. As I frantically tried to plan our escape before the police came and took him away, she just laughed. Later, after the procedure, when I was driving him home, I asked him, what would you have done? If she said yes, what would you actually have done? He got a little shy, he got a little nervous, he gave a little giggle, and he said, "I probably would have fainted." That was my dad, the big talker, no action. However, when it came to helping people, he was little talk and all action. He was always there when he was needed. Although his big joke was then when we asked him for something, he would say, "Oh, I can't do that because I'm going to be away on business," long after he retired. He was always there every time for all of us. Even into his early 80s, if he was needed to be around for his grandkids or whatever, he was there. Sometimes we weren't sure who was actually watching who, as is portrayed in a wonderful picture that my kids took of him. That they made a do not disturb sign, put it on him, didn't wake him up, took the picture. So he was helping out a lot that day. But he was still always there. As many of you know, the last couple of years have been hard on my dad. A few hospitalizations and a couple of stints in rehab. However, he kept bouncing back. This time, however, he could not. They said he died of heart failure, but nothing could be further from the truth. His mechanical pump may have stopped pumping, but his heart never did. And it is still alive and strong and well in all of us. When he said he was the luckiest person in the world, he may have believed that. But the truth is that my brothers and I are the luckiest people in the world because we were able to call him Father for our entire lives. He taught us how to help others, how to cherish others, how to stay close with others, how to be fathers, and the importance of family and friends in our lives. He showed us that for a boy or a man, it is okay to cry. Between him and my mother, they taught us how to love, and just as important, how to say and never to be afraid to say, "I love you." As much as he will be missed, he will live in us forever. Our memories of him will stay strong and bring us everything from tears to laughter. So next time any of you are at a restaurant and you order that proverbial hamburger with ketchup, and if you're served that hot dog with mustard, instead of getting mad, hopefully it'll bring a smile to your face as you remember one of those loving and caring men that ever walked the face of this earth. And then for his sake, eat the hot dog. You may just find that you like it a little better.
beautiful. It's my honor now to invite up 3 of Cass's grandchildren, Sam, Max, and Ilana, to share their memories.
My goodness, Bravermans like to give speeches, huh? I don't have anything prepared. I'll keep it quick. I just wanted to share a few bits of gratitude and a memory. I realized that on the way out here that mostly what I feel right now is gratitude for a number of different things. That we got so many years with him. And as a grandchild, I only saw the end. I have vague memories of visiting him at work, but really, you just see the tail end of someone's life as a grandchild. But we got him until 95, and he was still driving. He was mentally there, physically, really only deteriorated in the last year or so, maybe a few years. It's just incredible that we got so many years with him, and I just am so grateful for that. Another bit of gratitude is to Mike and it's already been mentioned, but I got to see Papa one more time. Mike drove him out to visit us. And that will just forever be something that's going to be such an important memory to me. It reminded me of when Grandma Shelly died, and I had driven out to see her, to spend some time with her. I think I just got my driver's license. And I got to spend some time with her right before she died. And that's just something I've never forgotten, and I know this is the same. And he got to spend some time with his great grandkids. I just feel so grateful for that. And also feel grateful for that he made this easy on me when he was out there. I know he said the same thing to some other people, but he said he was ready. And he had a good life, and even while between Mike bossing him around, he expressed how grateful he was for what Mike was doing for him. And so he made it easy for me because I know he was ready. And he knew he felt like he had a good life and he was ready to go. And then it's much easier to see someone go that way. And I feel grateful that I was able to give him a few great grandkids and he got to spend some time with them. We named our son Cael Roy after Casper Roy, although I think that in the last few years, he started thinking that Roy was for Rochelle, and my dad wouldn't let me correct it. I guess he preferred the idea that Cael was named after Grandma Shelly, not him. But we did name Cael after him. And one memory that I wanted to share is a story that takes place in Pueblo, Colorado. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to tell that story. No, at Cael's first birthday, Papa Cass was there, and we had a cake in front of Cael, and Cael he takes after the rest of the Braverman boys as maybe timid and sensitive boy, and I think we all got that from Papa Cass. And but Papa Cass was standing next to him, and those birthday parties, they're supposed to, you expect them to just dig into the cake and smash it. And Cael was just kind of standing there, not really doing anything. And Papa Cass came up behind him. I actually have a picture of Papa Cass's hand just behind his head right before, and he just smashed Cael's face into the cake. And Cael just started bawling. So I just feel grateful that we got to have him for as long as we did. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Papa Cass's grandson, Max.
You guys are going to have to bear with me. I wrote a few different speeches here. I wanted to be perfect, but it never was going to be. Dear Papa, I've been staring at this computer screen all week, looking into the sky, wondering where you went, while I try to write this speech. I try to hold the tears back, as I don't want Marissa to see me cry all day. But I don't think I did a very good job at that. I knew this day would come, and I thought it would be easier with how old you were, but it's been quite the opposite. I think it's because with you living such a long life, it gave me the opportunity to be around you so many times. You may have been 95 years old, but you were never that old in my eyes. You never acted that old. When you think of a 95-year-old man, you normally think of someone that's grumpy, but that was never you. Even these past 6 months, when I think you knew down deep you were nearing the end, you were still so much fun to be around. I guess I was just naive to think that you were going to live to 100. I was counting on you being out in Arizona for the next 5 years to walk the mall, eat memes, and play Rummy Cube. If you were here, I know that you'd be sitting in the front row, crying for each of these speeches. When it came around for you to speak, you would tell us you were the luckiest man on the face of this earth. You would tell us how much family means to you. You would then tear up again thinking about Grandma Shelly. You would say how much you wished that she was still here, how much you missed her, and how proud of us you would be. As I was writing this speech, I looked up in the sky and can only pray that the two of you are finally reunited. I got news for you, Papa. You weren't the lucky ones. We were the lucky ones for having you in our lives. I never once heard you discuss money. The root of happiness for you was family. You were right. I have been chasing money and success my entire life, and it never once has made me any happier. I've had a lot of friends throughout my life, but those are not the ones that are here for you in times like this, even though there are a lot of friends of his here, but mostly family. It's crazy to me to see this many people here at a 95-year-old's funeral. I feel like if Papa died 20 years ago, there'd be a line out the door with thousands of people here. He always told me how sad he was of all the people he had outlived. And now he finally is reunited with them. Feels like yesterday that Grandma, me, and you walked onto that Carnival cruise ship together. I was so excited to go on that trip. My grandparents were taking just me on a cruise. For a kid with 3 other brothers and sisters and so many cousins, I felt like the luckiest kid on the face of this earth. You were taking me and only me. I felt so special. For a few old folks and a young kid, we sure did have an amazing time. We were all in one cabin together, but I wouldn't change it for the world. We all had our separate beds. I would drive Grandma crazy with my clothes laying all over the room. I would come back into the room in the middle of the night after running around the ship when the two of you were asleep. You would wake up when I walked in. I remember you would sit up in your boxers and white t-shirt, half asleep, asking me if I was okay, and then you'd walk into the bathroom and pee. Then you would get back into bed and start snoring 5 minutes later. You would be snoring so damn loud I couldn't fall asleep. What I'd give to hear you snore one more time. From that trip forward, I wanted to be around you so much. You had this way of making me feel so special. For someone that had so many loved ones in his life, you had a way of truly making each one of us feel as if we were your favorites. Maybe that's why you told us, each one of us, we were your favorites, because you had the capacity to treat each and every one of us as if we were the only ones around. You never stopped loving me, even when I stopped loving myself. You were there for me through the ups and downs, and I sure tested you at the downs. You never wavered, not for 1 second. I always felt your support in my corner. I never told you how much I appreciated your unconditional love and support, but I know that you knew. I know that I wouldn't be where I am today without you, and for that I will always be grateful. It must have been just a few years after the cruise that Grandma died. It feels so long ago as I struggle to remember the details, but I do remember how I could feel your pain in the pit of my stomach. I just remember how sad you were. I hated seeing you that way. But for some reason, I wasn't worried about you. You had this larger-than-life strength that made me know that you would push through. Boy, do I wish I had some of that strength now. I can't help but to visualize Grandma and you at that Jewish dance that you tell me about, the start of the Bravermans. I picture you standing there nervous around your buddies, staring at Grandma across the room. Your heart starts pounding as the nerves build up as you try to go up to her and speak to her. You never knew what you actually said to her, but I think Grandma knew you were a special one right when she saw you. You taught me so many lessons over my life, but none more important than a man's life, more important than how a man's life is measured. It's not measured by the amount of money in his bank account or the size of his house. It's measured by his character and the way he treats his loved ones around him. No one was a more successful man than you. There was so much I wanted to tell you on the phone last week, but I couldn't get any of the words out. I wanted to tell you that you've always been my hero, that I've always looked up to you and treasured every moment we spent together. I'm ready to tell you now just how big of an impact you've had on my life. I've always looked at you as the king of this family. When you think of a Braverman, Papa's the first person that comes to your mind. He encompasses everything we all strive to be. He's the first person everyone looks for in a room of loud Bravermans. Everyone wants to sit next to him and talk to him. You were larger than life. You were loving, caring, and compassionate, but also so strong and brave at the same time. Someone that can be crying 1 second as he remembers the past, but the next minute giving all of his energy to his loved ones around him. I don't know how you were able to put this brave face on these last 6 months in front of me. When I moved out to Arizona 5 years ago, the hardest part was I no longer was able to see you. I didn't realize how much I needed and missed you until I was gone. I'm not very religious, but I strongly believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that when God knew you had a year left to live, he brought you back to me because he knew that I needed you. I apologize to the rest of you that we stole him from you guys, but I can promise you that I needed him, and we made use of the time. Over the past 6 months, I got to spend more time with Papa than most grandchildren get to spend with their grandparents over their entire lives. Each Wednesday night, Uncle Mike, Papa, Marissa, and me would meet at the Elks for all-you-can-eat pasta. The food wasn't very good, but the games of Rummy Cube were priceless. Papa would sway his head back and forth to the music they were playing, while Uncle Mike and I smoked cigars. On the weekends, we would drive over to Uncle Mike's house to take Papa for his morning walk to the mall and then to Chompy's for breakfast. We dropped Georgie off at the house and promised Mike that we would do the full walk around the mall. We got caught red-handed the first time when they charged Papa's credit card 45 minutes after we left the house. Papa didn't want to do the full walk anymore, and his grandson wasn't going to make him do it. Papa started to get sick of the food at Chompy's, so we moved our weekly meal to Mimi's Cafe. Papa would order clam chowder soup and a side Caesar salad. He loved it there. It would usually be a half-hour wait to be seated, so we had Rummy Cube with us at all times. The game never left our side these past 6 months. We all loved to play together. After lunch, we would go back to Mike's and continue to play Rummy Cube, listen to music, and smoke cigars in the backyard. Papa was usually cold in the 80-degree weather, so Mike would put the heater on for him. Every half hour, Mike would tell him to get up and walk. And he would say, "Come on, I don't want to walk. Let's play one more game." He wouldn't let Papa off the hook like we would. I see why he didn't now. When Marissa wasn't around, he told me the story about Pueblo, and when she was around, he told me the story about how he met Grandma. The king that you are was on full display these last 6 months. Uncle Mike became your full-time butler. You had him waiting on you hand and foot while you sat on your throne handing out orders. "Bring me my jacket. Go get me more ice for my diet soda," and more. Uncle Mike always made sure he was comfortable as possible. Uncle Mike postponed his retirement to make sure you were as comfortable as possible. As many times as he jokingly threatened the old folks' home, I knew he was going to do this until the end. We would even talk about how we hoped Papa would make it to 100. Uncle Mike was prepared to go back and forth from Chicago for these next 5 years if that was going to keep his father happy and alive. I don't know anyone else who would do that for anyone. He had his retirement plans for years. We would sit back in his backyard and talk about the places he wanted to travel during retirement. However, I do know that he was willing to put that on hold for you. I know that you never wanted to be a burden on anyone, and you wanted your son to go live out his retirement the same way that you did. You guys weren't there, so you don't truly understand how much of a responsibility this was for Mike, but it was a lot. He made sure Papa had his smile on when we were over there, but I know when we were gone there were a lot of difficult times keeping Papa going. It must have been extremely difficult watching the person closest to your heart slowly dying in front of you, but maintaining the strength not to show that. As much of a responsibility as this was for Uncle Mike, I now feel that he was the lucky one. He was the one that got to spend every minute of every day with his father during the final year of his life. As we all know, baby Jack was born prematurely about a month ago, named after Papa. I have this intuition about Papa's timing of death and baby Jack battling to start his. I think that you made a deal with God that you would trade in your life, but only if baby Jack could live a healthy one. So I'm going to hold God to that, because otherwise it's not fair. You would have wanted me to move on and be happy, but I'm sorry that's just not going to happen yet. I loved you too much, and I miss you way too much for that to happen anytime soon. I will never forget you. I will never stop loving you. I promise that I will think of you every single day for the rest of my life. I love you.
One page, double-sided. It'll be short, I promise. Whew. I said I was okay going last the other day, and now I'm regretting it a little bit. Almost every Sunday when I was a kid, as my dad said, Papa would come over and we would play cards. I was always so excited to see his car pull up in the driveway because he would, without fail, ring the doorbell countless times, even if the door was wide open, to let us know that he had arrived, and for his favorite granddaughter, we were all his favorites, to greet him. As he got older, we started coming over to his house on Sunday to play cards instead, and it was truly something I looked forward to, and I know he knew that. Because of him, I am now a mediocre hearts player who learned a key lesson. Always try to shoot the moon, because you might just make it. And he did, at least more often than my dad and I did, because he tried. I know I get my generosity from Papa. Over the past few years, he took to giving me a weekly $1 allowance at Sunday night dinners. He would hold out his hand in a fist, and I'd come running to the side of the table to get it from him. It's a silly tradition, but I hope I can carry it on with my grandchildren one day. I know I get my teary eyes from Papa. Anyone who saw me in the front row, I think I cried every person that gave me a hug, and here I am now. I cry more than the average amount. Understated, when I'm happy and when I'm sad, but he always took the cake on that one. Every family gathering, when he said what he was thankful for, he would cry. Every time I would sing and play piano for him, I'd turn around and he'd be there crying. I know I get my silly sense of humor from Papa. One of my favorite memories from my sister and I's childhood is one day we were driving home from getting ice cream. Papa made a left turn onto the wrong side of the road, and luckily no cars were there, but my dad was yelling, "You're on the wrong side of the road." So he moved the car over to the correct side, and he said, "I know that. I can see the cars better that way." And that line has always stuck with us, and we will laugh about it from now on. I know I get my love of music from Papa. There will always be a special place in my heart. Every time I sing, that I'll think of him and his support. In a way, I'm relieved now, knowing that he can be watching me together with Grandma, someone I know he's missed very deeply for a very long time. The very last time I saw Papa was the Wednesday before he passed. I visited him in the hospital, and we got to play cards, and I was able to sing him his favorite song, Edelweiss. One final time. We looked at each other as I sang, and this time he sang along with me. And after I finished, there was this light in his eyes, and he started telling me stories about when he was younger and how he and my grandmother met. It was beautiful to see music have that effect on him, and I will always cherish those moments. And last but definitely not least, I know I get my heart from Papa. The ability to feel everything so deeply in love with my whole heart, even if it's painful at times. Papa always used to tell me a story about when I was younger. After my grandmother passed away, we were watching a play, and he turned to me and said, "I wish your grandmother was here to see this." And I looked at him and I said, "I know she's here with us, looking down on us and watching too." And I put my head on his shoulder, and he said it made him cry. For years, he's told me that story at least a few times a year. So I'll end today by saying the same for everyone here. I know he's here with us, looking down on us and smiling at the wonderful, loving, giving, supportive family he's created. And I know he's so proud of each and every one of us. Papa, I'm so thankful for the years I've gotten to spend with you. I've never taken that for granted. I love you and I miss you. Sunday night dinners and cards will never be the same. Thank you for always being a smile, a laugh, and a hug I could depend on. And thank you for teaching my life. Thank you for teaching me to live my life always shooting for the moon. I'll keep that message and our memories in my heart forever.
Cass now joins his caring parents, Betty and Phil, his dear siblings Dorothy, Jean, Marge, Allan, and Myron, and his loving wife Shelly, in the heavenly bonds of everlasting life. Here in this world he leaves behind a legacy of love. Dad leaves behind a legacy of love to his cherished sons, to Mike, to Bruce and his loving fiancée Karyn, to Chuck and his loving wife Devida. Grandpa leaves behind a legacy of love to his adoring grandchildren, to Sam and his loving wife Margie, to Max and his loving fiancée Marissa, to Jacob and his loving wife Tori, to Lauren, to Ilana, and to Lara and her loving fiancé Zach. Each of you were his favorite grandchild. A proud great-grandfather leaves behind a legacy of love to great-grandchildren, to Cael, Reese, and Jack, the lights of his life. Uncle Cass leaves behind a legacy of love to his nieces, Suzanne, Betty, Maxine, Susan, Carolyn, and Leslie, and all of his cousins. He loved you so very much. Cass leaves behind a legacy of love to all of his family and his friends. In the words of Rabbi Milton Steinberg, we say that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which a loss inflicts is the measure of a love that is greater than death. May we learn to hold on with open arms to the love he had for us and the love we will always have for him. May his memory forever be a blessing, and together we say, Amen. We rise, if we're able at this time, in honor of Cass's soul, as we offer the El Malei Rachamim, the blessing to usher his soul up into heaven. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים טהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת חזקאל בן פנחס שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ביצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Cass, who has entered into eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life. May God be his inheritance, and may he rest in peace. Together we say, Amen. Amen.
This concludes the service here in our chapel. The interment will take place immediately at the family's lots at West Lawn Cemetery, 7800 West Montrose in Norwich. Following the interment today, the family will be sitting Shiva at the Braverman residence, 516 Warren Road in Glenview. That information's on the inside portion of the funeral service folder you should have received. If you did not receive one, they are available as you depart. The family will be sitting upon return from the cemetery until 8 p.m. today and tomorrow from 2 until 6. I'd also like to please call your attention, the family has asked that memorial contributions be made to Hadassah. That information's on the funeral service folder. For those of you watching on the live stream, that information is available on the website you are currently on. For those of you going in procession with the family, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. That sticker should be in the front passenger side of your windshield. Would also ask that you please have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on the tops of the vehicles throughout the procession. As we drive in procession today, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. We want to avoid having any large spaces or large gaps in the procession, particularly as we pass through the intersections. At this time, I would ask everyone to please rise as Mr. Braverman and his family and the rabbi are escorted from the chapel. Thank you.